Alright, for the vertebral column, the first thing we do is talk about sort of some of the basics. Let me grab our thoracic cage from class. Kind of hard to tell the curvatures. We can see those again in class, but you can see how all the vertebrae, and again this is brought from school, so these are all wired together in nice, pretty good shape. But anyway, you can see how the vertebrae line up together. And there's three basic types of vertebrae that make up the vertebral column. The cervical vertebrae, which would be up here, not on our thoracic cage because it's not connected to that, would be the cervical vertebrae, which I actually do have some cervical vertebrae that I found here in the brush. And we have the thoracic vertebrae, which you can see here, and then lumbar vertebrae, which are down at the bottom. They're a little bit bigger, but we'll see those in a second. So I just wanted to show it to you kind of all together. These guys are getting kind of wet. It's really humid out here tonight after it rained. It's actually a pretty nice night. There's some stars out, but I'm still kind of freaked out being over here, but that's all right. This is a good way for you guys to learn some stuff. All right, so let's focus on the vertebrae, cervical vertebrae, and what we had were 7 of them, and I sort of put them back together here, but they're not all 7. Actually, these are thoracic vertebrae, so this one right here is the thoracic vertebrae, so I'm going to get that one out of here. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, we do have all 7. Holy cow, it's pretty rare that we would, I think, find all 7 cervical vertebrae at the scene of a crime. Did you guys hear that? Oh man. Ah! I'm really freaked out right now. Alright, so anyway, cervical vertebrae. What we have are the top 2 vertebrae, which are actually unique. I forgot to mention from the skull. Oh, dude, sorry. Oh. Alright, if you look underneath the skull here, there's a skull. If you look underneath the skull, we have 2 bumps. They are the Occipital Condyles, and basically what those 2 bumps do are to sit just like that on top of the cervical vertebrae, actually 1 and 2, so that the skull has something to sit on. And you can see right here, these 2 facets are actually little like cup-shaped, or little like saucer-shaped structures that will accept those occipital condyles. Except it's backwards. I can't face it in there and make it work. But anyways, the occipital condyles would sit right on there. However, this is the back of the spine, but you can kind of see like how those bumps would line up. Although if I put it on that way, it's just backwards. But just so you can see how it works. All right. So the first 2 cervical vertebrae, they're just C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, and C7. Here's C1, which is called the atlas. And again, the function of the atlas is that it's able to rotate, and so obviously that's going to allow the head to pivot. C2, which is called the axis. Oh man, I feel really nasty touching this, but anyways, I gotta get over it. And these are, by the way, that would be pointing forward, so the skull would be like that. All right. And so what we have here, this thing is called the dens, and you can see that sticks up and fits right. Man, I'm hearing like frogs or something, I hope. Anyways, that fits right inside there, just like that. The dens here is actually for the skull to attach the ligaments and stuff inside the skull, on the base of the skull that would attach there, so that the skull is actually held on quite tightly, obviously for good reason. And then, so we have a couple other things here. One, we have the vertebral, there it is, the vertebral foramen, which you can see is just that right there. That is the hole that goes down the spinal column, and you can get another look at it right there. And you can see these bones are pretty cleaned up by whatever animals and stuff that have been around here. But anyways, let me just get to some of the basic stuff here. For these vertebrae, we have, alright, so there's the vertebral foramen, that's where the spinal column is going to pass through. We also have transverse, I don't know if you can see them, we have transverse foramen that are there on the side. And those are for some nerves to pass through, but also blood vessels. And so those are coming off, going up the spinal column, up and down the spinal column, all the way. We have more of them. Here you can see, oops, sorry. You can see here on C3, we start to see on the back, again, this is the back here. This is what your spine, your backbone is made of when you feel the back of your neck and back of your spine. We actually have what's called a Bifid process. And you can see there's that forking action that structure takes. Alright, and that's unique for the cervical vertebrae, C3 through typically C5 or C6. You typically see that Bifid process. Let's see. Basically, the cervical vertebrae look pretty similar until you get down to C7. This is the spinous process of C7, which you can see sticks out a little bit more than the others. Get that out of there. Sticks out a little bit more than the others. And that's where you guys were poking your toothpicks and stuff on that lab that we did a little while back. When you guys were doing the skin receptors lab. And so, let's get down to a thoracic vertebra, which you can see, let me line them up here. Cervical vertebrae, which typically have this sort of structure, and then the thoracic vertebra that has this structure. They both have the vertebral foramen, the hole to go through. They both have a spinous process. Certain cervical vertebrae have the Bifid process. The thoracic vertebrae and some of the lumbar vertebrae as well, you can see there, have a spinous process too. They're a little bit shorter. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. Sorry. And let's see what we have. Let me get a lumbar vertebrae too. I sort of put them together here. You can see how they would be running up the side. Let's put this one right here. So that they're all lined up here. You can see the difference between all of them. Notice how big the lumbar vertebrae are, especially the body here. Let's go through some of the vocab. The body of the vertebrae are these parts right here. The big part that would be towards the front, this would be anterior, facing that way. Cervical vertebrae have them, but they're just a little bit, quite a bit smaller, especially compared to the lumbar vertebrae. Spinous process, like I showed you. Spinous process in each one. Thoracic spinous process are a little bit longer. Lumbar get really short. Cervical, C2 through C6, typically you can see the Bifid process. C7, right there. C1 and C2, you can barely tell any kind of spinous process, but they're there. We have the pedicles, which are these like short pieces of basically connection, really all it is, and they're really, really short. It's basically connecting the body, the front here to the back here. So that right there, actually I brought a little marker just in case. There's the pedicles right there. They're actually really just connecting the body to the rest of the vertebrae. They're pretty small there on the cervical, but they do exist. We also have articulating processes, and this is really easy to see when the vertebrae are still attached. Man, this is gross. But you can see how these lumbar vertebrae fit into each other, sort of like a puzzle. And so these guys here would be the superior articulating processes with the superior articulating facets on the inside, little cup-shaped. And then the inferior articulating process. The inferior articulating process are going to fit in with the vertebrae from below. So you can see here the inferior articulating process here fits in with the superior articulating process of the vertebrae below it. That is the same for all of them. So they all have that, a way to fit in with each other, sort of like a puzzle piece, but you get a really good look at it right there. How they sort of fit in just like a puzzle. So the superior makes contact with the inferior of the one above it. Let's see, what else do we have? We have the lamina, or laminae, which are basically, here's a good, so basically connecting the spinous process with the transverse processes. We'll do those in a second. Here's the lamina on each side, basically connecting right here, just sort of making a connection point. Again, sort of like the pedicles, not much to them besides just connecting different parts of the vertebrae together. The transverse processes, which exist in all the vertebrae, they're just different sizes. So you can notice here on the thoracic vertebrae, pretty obvious, these transverse right side, sort of like a transverse plane of the body, right? This would be like looking at the a sagittal view here. They stick out the side, all right? So these guys here on the thoracic vertebrae are actually going to have facets that are going to articulate with the ribs. And actually, I found a couple of ribs. I know this is kind of gross, but I found a couple of ribs that are, I can show you how this would work. So right there, see that transverse process has a facet there, a little cup shape on the outside, and that's going to hold the rib, and then it's going to go make contact with the sternum up front. And I'll show you that on the thoracic cage that I brought from school. Oh man, I got a runny nose, sorry. Oh, still kind of freaky being out here in the dark. Alright, so let's see what else we did. What I wanted to show you with the lumbar vertebrae, and you already saw how the body is a lot bigger on the lumbar vertebrae if we're looking at it from the top, the superior view, but also from the side. And I'll try to make this as easy as I can. You can see the difference if I put these on their side, the difference between all of these. The body is really small on the cervical vertebrae. These guys are real skinny. They get a little bit thicker as you go down the thoracic vertebrae, and then they're really thick when we get to the lumbar vertebrae. And again, you got to think, all these vertebrae stacked on top all the way up, and those lumbar vertebrae down at the bottom have to be really big because they're supporting a lot of weight up on top. So the reason that those guys are so thick like that. Last thing I wanted to show you with just the vertebral column, get these out of here, is oh man, I'm starting to get freaked out. By the way, if anybody finds this video and I don't publish it for you guys to learn something, know that when I found these bones, it was just for an educational purpose. By no means am I out here hiding bones or committing any crime. So please, someone, make sure that you tell the authorities that I kind of stumbled upon these bones fishing, and now I'm looking at these as a means to educate my students, not anything else. Man, I'm getting freaked out. It's so dark out here.